Hi, my name is Megan Hickey, and this is my first book critique. For my featured book, I decided to choose Boston and the Feast of St. Francis, and I really love this book, and I chose it because I love animals, and I really love the devotion that St. Francis has to animals, so that is why I chose the book. And the author is Sue Stanton. It was illustrated by Gene Heiberg. The genre is biography, picture, and informational. The reading level is third grade and up. And this is a book about a boy named Sam and his dog Boston. And for St. Francis's feast day, he was able to bring Boston into school. But Boston was a little crazy, so Sam was scared that Boston would disrupt the class. And Boston did end up disrupting the class, but the priest showed how Boston was a perfect example of the love St. Francis has for the animals. And this book describes who St. Francis was and what he was known for. For my content area examples, I have one for theology, which is for the first grade, and I would use this book on the Feast of St. Francis. And first, we would read the book, and then I would let the students draw and cut out their animal. And I found an awesome website online where they would be able to draw their animal, and we would print them and cut them out, and they would get the chance to name their pet animal. And then we will all pray the St. Francis prayer as a class at the end with our pet animals. And this applies to the designer SD standard because the students will learn a way to design something while learning a lesson. And this applies to the outside world because they will get to learn how to use their creativity. And then for spelling and vocab, I have that lesson plan for the second grade. And I would have a list of different animals, and they would get to memorize each animal, and I'll give them a worksheet that I created, and they'll spell the animals and match the animals to the sound that they make. And this way, the students will learn how to memorize and spell. And then to conclude the class, I will pray the St. Francis prayer. And this applies to the CCSS for the students because they will learn how to memorize and match, and this will help the outside world as they continue to grow up and use this method throughout the classroom. And then here are the picture examples from our content. So on the left, I have the St. Francis prayer. And then I have the picture of the dog that I drew, and I named it Brownie. And then I have the sketch.io link right there. And then I have the the worksheet that I created. And this just shows how first the students will copy down the word, and then they will match the animal to the sound that it makes, and then they will get the chance to draw an animal. And then for my second book, I have Harriet Tubman and Black History Month. The author is Polly Carter. The illustrations are by Brian Pinkney. The genre is informational, multicultural, and biography. The reading level is fourth grade and up. And the summary is that this is about Harriet Tubman, and she helped lead the enslaved out safely. And it's a really inspiring book about how she was so brave to help these enslaved. And the use of this would be a good book for a history class. For my third book, I have Eduardo, the horriblest boy in the whole wide world, and the author is John Birmingham. The genre is realistic fiction and picture. The reading level is second grade and up. And this is a story about Eduardo, who's a normal little boy. And as normal little boys like to do, they start to act up. And he was doing horrible things around other people, and it wasn't helping them at all. And then as he continued to do these horrible things, it surprisingly started to help people. So he turned out to be the horriblest boy, but then turned into the loveliest boy in the whole wide world. And the uses of this would be teaching children what is right and what is wrong. And the awards that it has is a Kate Greenaway Medal for the illustrations. And then for my fourth book, I have Scaredy Catfish, and this was by Gail Donovan. The illustrator was David Austin Clark Studio. The genre is modern fantasy, traditional literature. The reading level is third grade and up. And this is a summary about how all the fish have fears, and Rainbow Fish one day wanted to face the fear of the deep, but decided that it was too scary to try to face the fear. So Rainbow Fish decides to tell the fish that it is okay to have a fear sometimes, but it is also okay to try to face that fear. And the uses of this would be to teach children how to face fears and how it is okay to have a fear. And the award of this book is that it is part of the best-selling book series of the Rainbow Fish and Friends. And then for my fifth book, I have Click Clack Moo Cow That Types. And this was by Doreen Cronin. The illustrator is Betsy Lewin. The award is the Caldecott Honor. The genre is modern fantasy and picture. The reading level is first grade and up. And the summary is that this is about cows and chickens, and they find an old typewriter in the back of the barn. And one night they get very cold, so they decide to ask the farmer for electric blankets. But the farmer will not give them electric blankets, so the cows and chickens decide to go on strike. And in return for the electric blankets, they agree to give the farmer milk and eggs. So finally, the farmer agrees, and he takes away the typewriter, gets some milk and eggs, and the cows and chickens get their electric blankets. And the use of this would be a fun way to teach children how milk and eggs come from cows and chickens. And then for the sixth book, I have How the Stars Fell into the Sky, and this was by Jerry Outen. The illustrator was Lisa Desmani. The genre is multicultural, historical fiction, and picture. The reading level is third grade and up. And this is a summary about the book of the Navajo legend of how the stars were created. And the man and woman were making laws with the stars, and a coyote wanted to help them one day. But the coyote was impatient that the laws were taking so long. So he decided to throw all of the stars into the sky, and that is where the legend comes from of how all the stars fell into the sky. The uses of this would be to teach children old legends throughout history. And the award of this is that it is number 162 in children's Native American books, which is very impressive because there are a lot of children's Native American books. And then for the seventh book, I have Ella Enchanted. This is one of my favorite books ever. The author is Gail Carson Levine. The award is the Newbery Honor. The genre is traditional literature and modern fantasy. The reading level is fifth grade and up. And the summary of this is that Ella was given a curse at birth of obedience by a fairy, and she was told to do everything and she would have to obey. And this was kind of like Cinderella, where she lived with an evil stepmother and two evil stepsisters. And she decided to go and find that fairy to ask for the curse to be taken away. And as she goes to find the fairy, she discovers magical villages and she meets her Prince Charming. And Ella decides to break the curse herself because the fairy will not break the curse. So she ends up breaking the curse and she marries her Prince Charming, and it is a happily ever after. And this is a great way to teach children different types of fairy tales. And then for the eighth book, I decided to do a poem called The Caterpillar, and the author is Robert Graves. The genre is poetry. The reading level is third grade and up. And this is a poem about a caterpillar going through the stages of life. And the caterpillar talks about what happens when it passes and becomes a butterfly. And the uses of this is a great way to tell the children of how caterpillars turn into butterflies. And in conclusion, I really enjoyed this book critique. It was super fun. And I was able to read a lot of children's literature and go back in time to when I was a child. Thank you.